Hello Spectrum Center viewers, this is Melvin and I'm making this video as part of the University of Michigan Spectrum Center AlumniConnect series, which highlights videos by Spectrum Center alumni in an effort to connect them with current students. In this video, I'll be responding to questions that were submitted in response to reading my bio, which you can read at the University of Michigan Spectrum Center website at spectrumcenter.umich.edu. I have nothing to compare my experience to, so I don't know if I would say it's more difficult. I think that every queer person, every trans person faces struggles and challenges in their journey, and they're not necessarily more difficult. I just think that they're different. You know, there are different challenges that make us who we are. Many of the challenges I've had are similar to those experienced by people of other identities, but intersect in such a way that they just look a little different. But in terms of, I guess, like challenges that are specific to me being black and gay and transgender and a man, dealing with the homophobia that often I find in black trans male spaces. In my experience, the black trans male spaces I've been in have been very, very normative in terms of gender, in terms of sexual orientation, very straight, very masculine. And I think part of that comes from this pressure to conform to some sort of norm that we've needed as a people, as a race, have needed to adopt in order to survive. I think it's something that's rooted in racial history in this country. And so because of that, and also I would say because of the messages we get from mass media about black masculinity, we create these spaces that, in which there's no room for variance. And so when I'm in these spaces, I find myself in situations where I have to, challenge these attitudes, these assumptions that we have about, other black trans men, being straight, being masculine, and just, trying to, get people to think about things a little differently. And I guess, another challenge I have, related to that is this need to find a community of other black, gay, transgender men. When I went to the Philly Trans Health Conference this summer, there was a session for queer trans men of color, and it was my first time being in a room with other queer trans men of color. It was so exciting. It was like maybe 20 to 30 of us, and it was great. It was great because I was looking for a community, because I find myself in situations often where all the black trans men are straight and all the gay trans men are white. I know there are others out there. I've met a couple, but for the most part, it feels kind of isolating, really, not having other people who share your identities. I didn't have any expectations. It was something that was new for me. I transitioned at the University of Michigan, and so that experience, it was my first time going through that transition of, coming out as transgender and transitioning at U of M, where everyone knew I was trans and queer and whatnot, to going to a place where nobody knew. And so that was something I never experienced before. I had no expectations about how that was going to go. I was just happy to find a job because it took me a long time to find a job after I finished grad school. And so I think part of me was curious about what it would be like to go and live in a place where nobody knew I was transgender. Then I quickly found that it was burdensome. I remember the first day at my job, I was meeting different people, and I was talking with one of the people there, I was introducing myself, and I saw a picture of Michael Jackson on someone's desk, and I'm a big Michael Jackson fan. And I struck up a conversation. I was like, "Oh, you're a Michael Jackson fan?" And she's like, "Oh, this is my, office mate's picture. She's the biggest Michael Jackson fan ever." I was like, "Actually, I'm the biggest Michael Jackson fan ever." And I went on to say that when I was a little kid, I wanted to marry Michael Jackson, totally forgetting, of course, that sounds different coming from a man than it would from a woman. And it was one of those things where I forgot the trans thing is going to have to inform how I talk about these issues and reframe things, about my past. But anyway, it was a lot to keep up with, staying in, and I started thinking about, well, do I want to come out, and would it be appropriate, and what would that look like? And I said, I eventually did come out, in a few times actually. There were several coming outs. The first time I came out at my job, I was actually doing a workshop on gender identity and trans people. It was for the Safe Zone Ally program. And I was scheduled to do 2 sessions. They were the same sessions at 2 different times, back-to-back days. The very first time I did that session, that workshop, I did not come out. I wasn't sure how it was going to go. I was feeling weird about it, so I just didn't do it. I read the evaluations that I got back that day. On one of the evaluations, someone had written, "This would have been much better if it was given by a transgender person." And I was like, what the hell? And I was just like, what? Wow. But after I read that, after I got over my, what the hell moment, I started thinking, like, why would that insight or perspective been valuable? And so the next day, after thinking about it some more, I was like, well, I think it'll lend credibility, blah, 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 blah. I decided to come out the next day when I did the training the second time. And I did the training. I did the very beginning, when I was talking about why I was doing this workshop. I think workshop presenters ought to, relate to the audience why this topic's important to them, why they're doing the workshop. And I said, I'm doing this workshop because, I'm transgender, and not too long ago, I was a student. And so that's how I connect to this topic. After I came out, the session was a lot more interactive than the first one. People felt more comfortable asking questions and engaging with the activities. And I was like, wow, so I attributed that to my coming out. And after that, I decided that I was going to come out whenever it was relevant and when I think it would help the situation. And so that's what I did. And I think that for those of you who are students and will be looking for jobs soon, that's something to definitely think about, whether or not, you want to be in the closet or just, not have people know, I guess, necessarily about your history. But definitely think about that. And I think that there are sort of pros and cons to both. Actually, it started with just a conversation, really. When I got to my job, I had heard of the Safe Zone program, and there is initial, basic training that you attend before you become an ally, and I attended that training. I felt there was room for improvement, and so I met with colleagues in the Office of Student Activities, which is the office that houses the Safe Zone program. 2 straight cisgender ladies who are good allies. So I met with them just to talk about, some, just ideas and just wanting to work with them. And they were so receptive. They were really, really receptive to me working with them. And that was the starting point of this relationship between me and them, and particularly me in this program. And I've continued to work with them on, further developing it. My advice would be to look within your own communities. Not all work, leadership work, organizing work, activism has to be affiliated with an established organization. It can involve just finding other people who share a goal or an interest or a goal or a passion about something in your community. It can just start with 1 or 2 people meeting together and doing something small that will affect other people. And to meet people, I would say definitely go where people are that share your goals, who share your passions. For example, when I was organizing the Transgender Day Remembrance event at my college, at my workplace, I reached out to a lot of different groups, community organizations, including there's a local LGBT community center that's very, very small. And I reached out to them just promoting this, event that was happening. And that led to this woman who was the director of this community center approaching me and asking if I would help her and help them develop resources for transgender people in the area. And so that opportunity just fell into my lap. Things just fall into my lap. There's another example where, I went to my church, we had a Men's Day conference, and there was a session on, that was done by a black same-gender loving guy. And at the end, there's this conversation, and when the deacons asked if I would be willing to, be involved with the creation of some sort of support group for parents who have LGBT kids. I come out to them as trans, so they knew my history a little bit, but, I wouldn't even go out seeking these things. Things just fall into my lap because I am, in places where there are other people who care about these issues. And so I would suggest, a good place to start would be to do that. And also, when you meet people, have a business card. One of the memories that sticks out as being the most important is that it was fundamentally rooted in my own coming out experience as transgender. When I was going through the training for the Speakers Bureau, which is now called My Voice, the training was a weekend, an entire weekend. And I had been questioning my gender identity, but it was through the process of thinking about my story and creating an educational tool out of it that I was able to be honest with myself in some ways that I don't think I was able to before, and so I was able that weekend during the training to come out to myself as transgender, and I will never forget that, because I think that was an important role. It was an important moment for me to be able to do that and to be able to think of my story and to feel comfortable sharing with other people. My takeaway from the Spectrum Center, I will, through my participation on the Speakers Bureau, I really learned to value and understand the importance of personal stories and creating change and changing attitudes. Just being on those panels and sharing my story and just seeing people, seeing people's reaction and being a part of this process of learning more about something, about exposing people to different people's experiences, and getting them to rethink some of their biases, and just being that part of that process really was amazing. And through that is when I really saw the value in personal storytelling, and that the role of that in social justice. And it's because of that takeaway that I really wanted to create a similar program at my current job, which I did. But anyway, that's it. I'm going to end this video. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. My name is Melvin Whitehead, and find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Melvin Antoine. Alright, peace out, go blue.